purpose of doing certain things in particular. So what was really good to hear is a different perspectives of how the perception was of the different exercises. So it's going to be the same kind of rhythm like it was yesterday, in that we're going to essentially showcase an exercise, or I'll put it up on the canvas. I'll explain the reasons why the exercise is there, and then elicit feedback before we start going through it, so that I can get an understanding of the perception of when we first get into it. Some of the personnel, if I'm going back to Zoom, it looks like we have some repeats. We have some new folks that are coming in. Alex is somebody that has been a frequent of mine, or different things that I put on. Alexander Bach, you're out in wait a minute. Now, which city are you in now? You're still in Germany, correct?
I'm still in Germany, but I'm thinking to travel next week.
Hence the animated background with all the palm trees and everything else. So
yes,
you're indicating whether you know it, that you're got the Canada hat on, you've got the background, so you're already planning your travel.
Yes, I'm already planning my travel, but it has nothing to do with the background and nothing to do with my Canada hat.
Which, I was gonna say Niagara Falls. If you're basically trying to do the pins on the map already and figuring out where you're going to go, then you're
I was there. I bought that exactly there.
Okay, cool. We have, like from yesterday, we have JF, Darwin, Finn, Graham, out in Johannesburg, South Africa. We got Cody and Barad. So we don't have quite the audience we did yesterday, but still it's going to be you're going to have context for what we're doing today for the most part. And hi, Quentin. Nice to see you on the panelist side. All right, so let's get the show on the road. I'm going to be showcasing I'm going to be putting in the mural URL for the canvas that we're going to be working on. And like yesterday, I'm going to be transferring things over to the main canvas. That sounds like Gia.
That is me.
Okay.
Hi.
Hey, you're close to where Alex is right now. Are you two in the same location?
Yeah, it's just the other side.
Okay, I see. Same villa, but different location.
Just wait a little bit. I'll bring you the coconut water.
Perfect, perfect. Thanks.
Can you bring me my wallet for the beers too?
Yes, and the barbecue later. Don't forget the barbecue.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, join you in a second.
Somebody got piping like reggae music through the whole thing. We'll do it. Okay, just put the link back into chat. This is going to be like for the main canvas. This is what we're going to be seeing here. Up at the upper left is the only thing you're going to be finding is just the 4 exercises we're doing today that's going to center on the audience. Now, for these exercises, especially the first one, I've already gone and put in a hypothetical in terms of what happened on day 1, rather than kind of extract what kind of the context there, so that's a little bit more succinct, and you'll see it in a bit. So for the first one, we're going to explore the audiences for the idea that we have, and I'll bring that into the canvas right now. And once I do this, I'll share my screen for the folks at home. So this first one here, and I'll kind of go through it, is on the left, you have the opportunity. And what we did is, for this exercise, we have a hypothetical around unemployment. And the question we asked is, why is it so hard for people to find gainful employment right now? And instead of answering that question, we just went straight to the what if and said, what if you could create jobs without a holding company? Meaning that if you could just basically create jobs for people to have without an underlying foundation for it. Then the top idea, hypothetically, was a national service exchange registry to hire services, or hire people, I would say, rather than services. And change the past a bit. And then the and, meaning like the thing they could add to it would be a training program to learn related skills. So those are hypothetically the top voted ideas and the supplemental ideas that came with it. Now, the way to work this out is I'm going to go ahead and lock the images one, so that's a little bit easier to navigate, is twofold. So this is, I'll say that the placing images was a idea from someone who's on the call, Barad, about being visual more so than working with text around the kind of audiences that would be perfect for this type of service. Or you could type out who you think the audience is for this type of idea that's listed here on the right, that with the context of what's over here on the left. So essentially, if you're on the panelist side, you'll be doing one of two things. you'll be doing an image search through Mural, and basically you just click on the left-hand side to show your images panel and do a keyword search for an audience type that you're thinking about for this type of service. Or if you can think of a audience type that would be ideal for a national service exchange registry to hire people, then you would put it down there. It could be the people that benefit from the service itself. It can be the people that administer it. It can run the gamut in terms of like where you think the ideal audience could be for this. So give it a thought, at least give it a couple, like a minute or two to think about it. And you can ask clarifying questions if you like. And then we'll give about 5 minutes to kind of go through this exercise and see what kind of different audiences you can think of. And before we begin, do you have any questions about this particular exercise and the intent of it?
I would have a question about the word national. So I think about Germany, where I'm in.
Okay. So
it's a question. It's so national means the country I'm in currently.
I would, for the purposes of this exercise, it being like kind of like a run through, I would essentially consider it something for your own country rather than trying to extrapolate or expand out into a country you've never been to before or an area. So kind of localize it for your particular situation, I would say. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay. JF, what are you thinking about when you see this?
I'm still processing. So
okay.
I'm kind of figuring this out right now. So don't have anything to say yet at the moment.
Okay. And if you'd like, I can kind of give some examples of what could go here. So if you're talking about a related exchange service, it could be something where you're talking about design professionals. So this is something where designers in the gig economy, I could say, like I'll just put to clarify it and put gig economy design professionals, especially in California here in the US that are really struggling to find work just because there isn't any. That could basically benefit from training and from extra practice and so on. Another one, and also exchange services with other people. Another could be, if you're talking about the service industry, then you're talking about things that are essential to like taking care of houses. So like construction consultants. Because there's a heavy amount of training that has to go into construction, especially depending on what you do, whether it's like structure, architecture. There's a whole industry for cement and hard products. So there's different audiences for that. So, but for this, it's open-ended in the sense that if you're talking about a national service registry to hire people for different things that come up, especially if the economy starts picking up again in different areas, what are some kind of professions or some people that would benefit from something like this, especially if you're trying to find gainful employment immediately and want to be put on the map for consideration. What's going to be interesting for me is how many people gravitate towards images versus how many people actually type in something, because both can kind of get into it a bit. Who is the person that put down the person working at the restaurant?
It's me. Makes sense?
Yeah. What was your thinking around it?
Well, because these people is struggling to find unemployment, and they could be listed in a national exchange registry to hire these people. Does it make sense?
Yep, it does. By the way, if you were originally invited as a panelist, but you came in as an attendee, you can either raise your hand or just basically in chat, just say here, and then I'll transfer you over to the side where we are on the panelist side. But if you just like to observe this time around, you're more than welcome to do that too. And if I recall from Barad's point before, or Bayrad, sorry, is that the images evoke different possibilities, so that when you see an image, it may actually correlate with like a 2 or 3 different audiences. So it's not necessarily just one particular dimension of it, but multiple ones if it's a certain type of industry. And I see you, Brad. I'll bring you over. Are you already over? No, not Brad. Sorry, Quentin. Hey, Quentin, you should be all set. Diana, are you doing okay on your end? Can we you still have audio and everything?
Hi, Robert. Thanks.
Well,
No
I
problem.
can hear you, but I don't think you can hear me.
No, I can hear you.
Oh, great. Hi, everyone.
Okay. I'm just double checking. I heard you before when we were able to get context. So now I'm
Oh.
just checking. And by the way, if we run out of room in the images thing, you can always expand the canvas and kind of bring it over to the right if you want. So you don't have to put it in that square. You can easily just come over here and start like making it out to the right. You can go outside the sandbox, so to speak. Be right back. And like yesterday, if you have thoughts or opinions or observations about something, do speak up. You don't have to wait for permission to do so. This is an open-ended kind of session.
What is interesting is that it allows to build like a mood board, but at the same time, it comes a bit, it lacks in specificity. Maybe just that. I would say pilot, aviation pilots, waitress, caregivers, elderly caregivers, something like that.
Sorry,
think-
disconnected. Back.
Sorry?
No, it's okay. It's just telling us that she's back.
Maybe combining both, because some of this image may not be clear for everyone. Just that.
Yeah. Especially if you're trying to figure out through the text, trying to convey a certain type and you're not sure how to basically like convey it very well. But yeah, I think the observation of the mood board is interesting because I can see it. Singers, yeah. The entertainment industry is going through a real interesting change with COVID. where some, like comedians, for example, some of them are thriving in online environments because they're putting out a ton of content and trying different things, versus stand-up comedians that they usually go to clubs and in bars that are used to a different environment, that are struggling because they don't have that reaction. They can't read the crowd. And some are doing a little bit of a hybrid of both, where they're doing live, but they know that there's a delay in terms of the reaction. Okay. So before we move on to the next step, does anyone want to make any comments about any of the cards and who we can help? Anything interesting or anything in particular that you see that someone did, even your own, that you'd like to kind of point out or clarify for your own understanding? And if you do that, go ahead and highlight the card so that people know that that what you're talking about, or that you'd like me to kind of ask about it. So an easy way to highlight the card, and I'll kind of zoom in on here, is when you go down here, go ahead and just select a digital card and give it any sort of color in the palette. It's like the 7th one over on the top of this sub menu. And usually a light color works because then you can give some visual acuity to it. But yeah, go ahead and speak up if you want to have any clarification on something that's in this stack here.
I guess it's more kind of a question, but actually, like, so one is the image and the other is the text, and I don't know, combining somehow the two, because I see a pilot and a picture of a pilot, and obviously that is a good thing, because it, for any, whatever the next step could be, it's inspiring to see a picture that makes me process it differently. But some others, there's a crowd of people like in a circle. That could be pupils, that could be students, but that could be anything. So that there is a combination of the cards down there, or linked and to the pictures. We have some, I think we have aviation pilots there, or we had aviation there, so that I don't know, you put a picture in and then you describe it somehow, so that the combination is clearer. That was a thought for me.
Okay. And Yasir pointed out that John Krasinski's Some Good News is something interesting that he started on YouTube. And I have not seen it, but I've heard other people talk about it. Someone highlighted training providers. Who was the person that created that one?
Oh, Robert, I'm just highlighting two because I think there's an overlap somehow.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yep. Although there's an LND in one, but it could be the same. So I could just delete one. Probably.
You could probably also lump online curriculum experts in there, because they're more or less the same.
This one.
Maybe we can combine all three. So I'm gonna experiment here. So online curriculum experts, training providers, and L&D professionals. Would that work, or is that combining too many into one?
I would say too many into one.
Got it. Okay. I'll scale back a bit. I think they could, depending on who you're talking about, what kind of training, it could be different than on like curriculum. Training and development L&D professional sounds like it's combining three different ones. Or like, what does LD mean in professionals for the person who wrote that?
I suspect it's learning and development, right?
It's learning designers. It's the people.
Oh, learning design.
Yeah, like learning designers are the people that develop courses. There's a lot of them out of work currently, but it would be like, you know, X company has a program they want to roll out, and they have internal learning designers that help build those programs.
Would you consider this particular card different than the training providers and the online curriculum experts, Diana?
No, I think that you could put them together.
Okay,
I
but
mean,
do you mean
L&D people often do online curriculum development, and Training providers may be different because that might be the actual facilitators compared to the people who are developing the content.
How do you feel about doing making that card learning designer professionals, and then the online curriculum experts is the one that's kind of taken out of the equation? Would that cover both bases?
I think it's pretty good.
Anyone have a problem with that? Going once, going twice before I make the move. Very good. And in that case, I will take mothers with time in their hands. Put them up here. So we got a nice little block, and I'm going to take these two colors out. Right. So if we've got, what's that?
I think there's two, and I kind of got on I'm one of the two, but the Ministry of Manpower and then the Transparent Needs Exchange. I think these, I was down a rabbit hole. I saw that the Ministry of Manpower, and I was like, oh yeah, and I was thinking about the highlighted national exchange, and I think I was down a different rabbit hole, but that doesn't seem to fit anymore. That seems to be more of a solution than or some sort of like construct. The Ministry of Manpower and the Transparent Needs, they aren't groups of people that we could help.
Okay. So who did Ministry of Manpower?
I did. I was wearing the Singapore hat perspective because there is a Ministry of Manpower, and so they're sort of like an enabler in an environment wherein people are kind of like losing their job and all. So we do have fairly good involvement of government, especially in answering all this persistent problem.
Would it help if I actually put the name of the origin of the country for that one, or should it be something that doesn't have an origin?
Well, we did say it's on the national level. So when taking off from where Alex mentioned that if we're looking at in Germany or in Switzerland or in whatever country, there should be at least an equivalent, sort of like maybe manpower.
Got it. Okay,
agency or department.
As long as we know the context, then we're good.
Yep, probably. Yep.
All right, then I'll leave it at that. Okay, so any other observations or questions about the cards we see here? All right, so for this particular exercise, I'm not going to take it away because we're going to need it for the next one. So I'm going to expand out the canvas a little bit to the right, and I'm going to add in the second exercise so you can see, you'll see how they're related. And like, as before, I'm thoroughly open to questioning, looking at this and saying, well, this doesn't make sense or this makes sense. I'm totally open to different points of view. So I want to clarify that before I bring the next thing in. So this may be a little bit of a jump. So if you look on the Zoom, you're going to see what I'm going to do in a preview. But if you're not, you just on Mural, then you're going to be surprised. Okay.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprised. So this is the next one. And let me lock this down because this tends to be all over the place. So give me 1 second before you select anything in here. I'm going to go ahead and lock this sucker down. So what you're going to be doing is there is kind of an Eisenhower matrix. And what you're going to be doing is taking the audiences or the images that you see over here, and you're going to be classifying them by how painful their current situation is in regards to unemployment and the amount of buying power you perceive they have. So if I take an image over here like a pilot, and I'm going to drag it over to here just for a second. So if I'm thinking of a pilot, I'm thinking of somebody that probably has closer to a bit more buying power than the average person, maybe gets paid well, but I'm speculating because I don't know. And I'm going to say that their pain is kind of somewhere in here. It's a lower pain, so that they're not really hurting per se. But again, this is going to be the perception of the person that I kind of put in here, or what people think. But the idea is you're going to take the text as well as the images and place them in this quadrant-based thing, between like the amount of pain threshold that they have with their current situation and the amount of buying power they have in terms of if they were to pay for a service or a product that would help them alleviate their pain. They would have this kind of buying power. I don't have examples to give for this because I ran out of time, but the idea is that I was going to showcase different industries, you know, for different types of situations. So I'll have that round the next time, but for now, just go ahead and drag over what you've done on this side and bring it over into here. And I'll take a quick snapshot to kind of show what we were doing on this side. Okay, so have at it. Go ahead and bring it over to someplace where you feel that these different groups should go. If you think there's duplicates between the card and the image, you only have to drag one or the other. So it'd be kind of a little bit of chaos, but the idea is to kind of branch and start thinking about the purchasing power of the individual or the people that you're talking about and the amount of pain that they're going through. Now, the purpose of this exercise is meant to be foundational for future exercises, where we're really considering based on the underlying idea that we have, what type of audiences we're going to be catering to when we start thinking about different ideas for the market.
So just one thought, a question from my side, if it's okay. So we are harvesting opinions, our opinions in this case, but we're not doing that actually for like the group, but it's like if I drag now I hope it's the artist where I think it's right. So it's only my opinion that's in there, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, somebody else may see where an artist is on the x-axis on the Eisenhower matrix and decide to move it in a different location or modify it a bit. So they don't need to be set in stone on the axis side, but it's totally up to you. It's kind of like when you're doing affinity diagramming with different cards. You kind of look at the cards in terms of where they seem to stack or where they seem to go. So if you have a slightly different interpretation of it, you can. The only time I would step in as a facilitator is if I see people trying to click the same image and it's being dragged back and forth, then we'll have a discussion about it so that there's no fighting over pixels. Also, one thing to note is that you don't have to drag all the cards over or all the images over. If some images don't seem to quite work or you can't interpret them, that's fully okay. Don't try to fit a square peg into a round hole, so to speak. Just go with what you think would work in this kind of matrix. And when I stop seeing movement or people dragging the cards over, we'll take a look at what people have done and do a little bit of dialogue about it. For those of you who are observing this dash process for day 2, you're more than welcome to put in some comments in the chat. You don't have to be silent observers. You can actually state some certain things that you're seeing that maybe we on the panelist side do not. And that's both on Zoom and on YouTube. So feel free to make any comments that you like. And they'll be helpful, and I can even call them out if there's something that the panelists could benefit from. Don't be shy. So one thing I'm noticing right away is that based on the answers we gave in the first exercise, we seem to be concentrating on people who have low buying power but have a lot of pain. Whereas they tend to kind of cascade into that upper left quadrant. And so not so much so on the high buying power percentage, though the event and venue owners are perceived to have a bit more of that, as well as training providers. And I think it's training providers, yes. So as we're kind of concluding this exercise, what kind of observations are you making about where we place these images and boxes? Graham, I'll call on you because usually you're my go-to when it comes to kind of seeing things from a process perspective. So what's been your observation with how the cards and the images have been played out on this grid?
So I think it comes from the precursor exercise and with what's going on in the world today is that I think a lot of us are feeling people's pain and experiencing pain ourselves as we work with our respective careers and what we do. So I think it's possibly reflective of that more than anything else.
Okay. Well, let's see. Who haven't not heard from? Darwin, what are your thoughts about the way this grid has been played out?
I'm trying to see a pattern wherein is it we're placing individuals or business entities. You know, an individual could be like a professional also, but I'm trying to suss out the pattern whether if there is one actually. I'm seeing something when I was looking at the quadrant, high pain, high buying power, where there's a venue owner there, so it's a business and a training provider. So obviously it's an ongoing business. So potentially that might be the one driving the analysis on that.
Okay. JF, what about you? What are you seeing here when we kind of put everything together?
In terms of this one, I think it actually, when I see this right now, and I'm thinking of how to apply it to the context, for example, with the nonprofit I'm working with, I'm actually seeing a way in which they can look at how they can help better some of their constituents. And so it can provide more focus for the nonprofit that I work with, as well as more direction if I involve this exercise. Because right now I'm seeing with this nonprofit I'm working, I'm seeing a lot of sort of scattered ideas that they're trying to solve for. Mm-hmm. And I see this as a way for them to actually hone in on a particular area when presented in this matrix.
Sounds great. I like the way that that you would actually transfer this to a different situation. Mm-hmm. Finn, I didn't call on you much last time on the first one, so I'm going to pick on you a little bit. What's your observation about what we're doing here?
Sure. I was just catching on a bit. So I think for me it was easiest to think of industries that are emerging, that are maybe not right now equipped with such high buying power. Like for example, I placed the one that looks like drinks in a store. Picture that's pretty much in the middle. I placed that there, and the idea behind it was basically the digitalization of retail, which is something that might be in need right now, that might get upwind from the Corona crisis. And so I think looking at it now, maybe I just didn't fully catch on the goal of the exercise, which was basically to figure out target audiences for the idea that we developed. And I was basically thinking more about industries rather than audiences that would profit from the idea. And I think this is
like it's okay that you actually did in industries, because it can span both people, organizations, industries, and so on. So it's totally fine if you did that.
So I think that maybe the questioning could and should also be a bit more open to not just what's already there, but also what holds future potential. So because maybe the other one I put was the bike messenger, which is crowd logistics, which might also, accordingly to the digitalization of retail, increase in popularity and therefore in buying power. But like I said, this is the focus on what is there now, and I was focusing on what might be emerging. Depending on the purpose of the exercise, maybe one or the other should be preferenced.
Okay, Diana, let's have you have the last word. What are your thoughts about this?
Which one?
Oh, can you hear it? Say it one more time.
Said which one? I think we have two Dianas.
Oh, I'm sorry. We do. All right, I'm talking to you, the one who spoke up.
Thank you. I guess so. So in my opinion, it is, on the one hand, it gives you a good overview of potential audiences that could be addressed. Although we noticed that most of them have a low buying power, we didn't specify how we're going to help them. So by bringing different groups together, for example, we could help them without without the need of them having a high buying power, because the goal is to create job opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
So I
So
think it's a good way to get an overview.
Okay. And that's actually what's coming up, or at least that's what the intent of the next exercise is going to be. And does anyone else on the panel side want to say anything else before we move on to the third exercise? Going once, going twice. No? Okay. So again, we're going to expand out a little bit. So it's different from yesterday in that on the canvas, what I was doing is actually taking away the previous one, but for this one, I'm actually adding to it. So it's just a different approach. So you can see the evolution of how things are. What I will do actually is take out this part one, since we've kind of already done all this, this particular one's exhausted. So at least we have the context of it, and I'll take this out and unlock that one and take that one. So give me just a second. Somebody actually remarked yesterday that I should consider playing music while I'm doing the interlude between the two. But between kind of bringing stuff over and kind of putting them on the canvas, I'm going to be, it would be too much kind of task switching on my part. So I apologize if I don't have any music. I should have a hot button within Zoom just to basically like start up something like Chopin or whatever and get that going. So give me 1 second while I kind of bring everything over. Let's kind of carry this down here and bring this up. Okay, like before, this is a first pass at the design. So if you see something here that doesn't make sense, then do speak up and let me know. And it's just going to take some time to render. Yep. Okay. So to Diana's question about the products and services they would consider, this is kind of where it lands. So in not knowing which particular audience was going to be dominating the landscape, it looks like we're definitely looking at the high paying, low buying power version here in terms of like the majority of where things are sitting. So the way the intent of this exercise is basically to think about the problems and pains that this audience has. So we're not necessarily going to be like putting out particular ones, but considering that we've done that, I'm going to modify this exercise slightly. So, and I kind of need, so before we engage it, I want to get your opinion on this. This exercise takes out the context around the people that we put here. And when I was doing this, I was afraid we were going to lose the context around the problems and pains we're having because they were too generalized. So from the panelist perspective, do you think that there should be a space here to bring over the audience types that we're thinking to be able to associate particular problems and pains that they have?
Yes.
Okay. I'm seeing
Yeah.
those. And then the products and services kind of go from there.
Yeah. Because I think it lacks that interim wherein we were talking about audiences, companies, and individuals, but then we didn't have that space to discuss what is it that they're feeling at that point.
Okay. I'm going to do a little bit of editing on the fly. So I'm going to move this over slightly and bring this out of the way for a bit. So like before, let's give ourselves a space for our audience. So can I delete it? No, it's here. So I'm going to take this from the previous exercise and put this here. So I'm going to put like, so it could be images or cards here. It's like kind of like a combination of both. So I'll say audience, images, or cards, or text cards, or digital cards. And then do you think there's an association of a one-on-one between the problems and pains and the audience? Like there should be, you can't really like combine 2 or 3 into one problems and pains kind of category. It basically, you would choose one and then they have a certain amount of problems and pains that go along with what they're talking about. So come on now, no context menu. There we go. So what I'm thinking about is something like this, where you have the audience type that you're thinking about, the problems and pains that they have, and then the products and services that will correspond to who they are and what they are. So that you're speculating on the There's the National Service Registry that we talked about, but there could be something specific that kind of lends itself to this audience. So you're not necessarily abandoning the original idea, but within the context of the original idea, you could create some different things that you're thinking about. Does that make sense? So to kind of bring it together, I will take the idea that we originally had and put that at the very top for reference. And thanks for being patient with me as I'm kind of working through this. I figured it's better to do a little bit of editing on the fly than have you suffer through an exercise that doesn't make any sense.
So Rob, is the intention to have the opportunity that's at the top there sort of carried through to prototyping with a nuance and a variance here, or are you looking it as a seed for something new?
So this is the original. So what I've noticed when I'm doing design thinking is that the more exercises you do, the more this becomes less relevant. Everyone tries to bring it back together so that you're trying to stay within the original idea framework. But I've found that people find a little bit more freedom in being able to expand upon what they know because they have new data. So their old idea may not necessarily be as relevant as before. So this is just basically done for context. If in the context of understanding your audience better or framing them in their buying power as well as their pain, if you kind of go down that rabbit hole and say, okay, for this particular one, I think they have problems and pains that correspond to this. And they could actually do products and services that are like this, but are centered directly to them. This gets a little bit more contextual to that audience and what you think that they need. That's at least my thinking, Graham.
Yeah, just thanks for clarity.
So here's a thought. Here's one way of going about it, is that what we didn't do here is we didn't vote. So we didn't actually vote on a particular one that seemed to be the most, that would have something we could explore that is correlated to the idea more, that maybe correlates to the service better. I still have them on equal weight. Yesterday, I made the mistake of not being focused enough on certain exercise, and I may be diving into that as well for this one. So what I'd like to do is do a quick kind of vote for everyone here. In Zoom, there's a way in your control panel of, it should say like, maybe I don't have it here. Did I take it out? No. There's supposed to be.
Looking for annotate?
Maybe. Oh, annotate. No. There should be. They used to have something where it was like you could do a thumbs up or a hand, but I don't see where that is anymore. Does anyone see?
Reaction, I think, but it's not here also with me.
Yeah, I don't see it either.
It's supposed to be reaction, a thumbs up in a hand.
All right, so we'll do it live. If you think that we should hold a vote on which audiences we should take forward, go ahead and put a thumbs up on your screen like this. If you think we should kind of leave it be and kind of explore open-ended like this a bit more, put your hand up like this. So just kind of put it in the camera. So either a thumbs up or a hand. And I have about both. So it's about even. I'll say, Darwin, which way are you going? Oh, geez. All right. How about this? Let's do a heat map vote. So we don't necessarily bring anything over, but it'll influence us on which particular audiences may be more interesting to kind of explore. So I don't know if Mural allows us to vote on images as well as text boxes, but we can certainly figure that out. So let me see here. I'm gonna go ahead and, yeah, let me lock this down so that it's not moving. So we'll try a vote. Let's do 5 votes. Yeah, let's do 5 votes. But let's see if we can vote on images as well as text boxes. If we're not, we'll cancel the vote, and then I'll find a way to actually be able to put a voting dot on the images itself. So let's test this out. We're gonna be voting on, and I'll bring everybody over to where I'm looking at. Right over here. Just check the chat really quick just to make sure I'm not, Sandy says thumbs up. Okay. Well, as long as Sandy's still speaking up, that's totally fine. All right, so what we're voting on, to clarify, is we're gonna be voting on the, either the boxes, the text boxes that represent the audiences that you're thinking about, or the images that also represent like the idea of the audience, or a visual representation of it. And so we'll give 5 votes and see where those votes kind of vet out. So we're going to be doing audience types.
And the question for the vote is which audience we think fits best the question, or
excuse me.
sorry.
Let's say the vote is to basically vote on an audience type that you think we could generate some products and services to help them. Like, or better, yeah, a better question is, which audience type do you think we're better equipped to help? Like, if you're thinking of ways to basically help these individuals with their unemployment situation, which of those do you think that have the most possibilities to help out with? How about that? Does that make sense?
One by each quadrant.
Say it one more time, Americo.
You want us to select one type of audience in each quadrant?
No, not one in each quadrant. It can be any of the ones in any quadrants.
All
It's
right.
like, who can we basically help? And this is going to be more of a heat map vote. Who can we help the most?
And you want us to look at them separately, because I think by connecting the different areas of expertise and possibilities of some of the groups and individuals we named, we could also create a service that helps two people or 2 instances at once. For example, we talked about the learning designers, and we also talk about retired professionals. So if we would, for example, bring together people with expertise like retired professionals and the learning designers, we could have them create new offerings. For example, if we even find someone who does online work, build a digital platform where the designer creates the course and the expert has a way of advertising their experience.
I see what you're saying. Maybe that can come together in the next exercise. So maybe to your point, if we require a bit more votes in case we think we're seeing combinations that we can do here. So it's not trying to isolate it down, but basically giving more votes so you can say, okay, I see combinations with those. And then the next exercise can allow for that. Would that potentially work?
Good to go.
Robert,
Okay. What's that?
how do you expect that the quadrants help us here to make our choice?
It's going to come down to, the quadrants are basically meant to kind of define by the group who in this arena, in this Eisenhower matrix, what kind of buying power they have, and what we perceive as their pain points, like how much pain they're going through when in regards to unemployment. This basically just helps to kind of visually figure out where people fall in the mix of things. It doesn't necessarily help us kind of figure out what kind of products and services they may be able to, they may benefit from. This is just to give us a framework on how we see our audiences. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I was wondering myself, because when you do that kind of exercise, it's to already do some kind of filter on all the people, activities, or industry, or whatever on the quadrants, and to dismiss a part of them to focus on another one. So what I understand here is that we don't do that. We just, it's just a way to categorize and to facilitate our choice for the next exercise, right?
Yeah, that's correct. That's the intent.
Okay.
This isn't to point out that a lot of people in the upper left are very poor and can't afford much. This is just to say, okay, when we're thinking about the next exercise and how to help them,
okay,
in what capacity, how should we frame it? Because if we propose something that's super expensive, that's high end and super expensive, it's going to miss the mark with a lot of them.
Yep.
It's more for the people that are on the upper right hand side.
Makes sense. Thank you.
And also, if you would look at it from a business perspective, let's say you have a company with a concrete problem, like how can we increase our sales or our revenues or whatever their goals might be. You can look at the different types of audience they currently have, the pain points, and then from a business standpoint, most of the time you would choose people with a relatively high pain and high income.
Okay.
Well, I mean, just to your point, I think that's valid. But I mean, if to Robert's point as well, I mean, if, for example, we focus on low buying power, high pain, then if we if we develop a product or service that is cheap enough, then they could potentially purchase it. And so it's not necessarily those with high buying power and high pain is the immediate and obvious target group.
Which might be, sorry to interrupt you, Robert, which might be one pain, like when you say it's an Eisenhower matrix. I would say that's a way for me to make educated decisions, because what's important and what's easy to do, I do first. So what has the most impact? And so in that sense, what Vera just said, and I agree with that, it has the flavor of high pain and high buying power is the thing. But actually, you're right. High pain is important, but if you have low buying power and you make a very nice product that sells billions of times, you can make evenly the same revenue. So the matrix in that sense might lead people in a different, or in a, not wrong, but in a different direction.
Yeah. All right, so to clarify, this is a heat map vote. So this is not basically saying that these are the only audiences we're taking forward. This is to give an indication from the group on who we could help the most based on the idea that we originally had and where we feel like that we could basically center our efforts, or that we could potentially like concentrate some more things. And this could include what was said before, like combinations, different folks of people, but this is what you should be kind of basing your vote on, is like who we have the most potential to kind of help out in terms of what's feasible and what's possible. So in that sense, instead of 5 votes, I'm going to give, let's say 8 between everyone. And again, we'll try voting on the images as well as the text. Do speak up if we can't vote on the images, and that'll be a good vantage point or note point for me, because then I can basically make sure we have voting dots placed on those images in advance. So the question is who can we help the most? And that you should see a prompt come up for voting. And again, try to see if you can vote on the images first. If you can't, let me know.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Try to hold it to 1 vote per card or per image. It might be great. I mean, you may be very enthusiastic about some of the images here, especially the ones that are holding up the bingo sign, but or even the baby and the mother, but try to keep 1 vote per image per card if you can.
Just a question for the one on the left, there's sewers and designers. That's an interesting combination of words. Are they designers of sewers, or is sewers incorrectly spelled?
They're the ones who sew clothes.
Oh, sewers, not sewers. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, when I first read that, I thought it was sewer designers, like people actually design like where all the waste goes. I was like, I never thought of that. That's a little out of the box, but yeah, it works. Although they could sew at home if they work in cold climates, and then they work on, they work in that industry as well. So everyone has knitted caps when they're out in the Siberian frost, laying down pipe and making sure the sewers work. I am going to have to experiment with music though. I know you could do it within Zoom. I just didn't have anything queued up. So I think for day 3, I'm going to try doing this during the voting sessions. Although I promise you, I won't play in the elevator music that you normally hear. It'll have to be something else.
Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. Or I could basically take votes like during in chat, say like, okay, what do you want to hear? And then basically queue those up in YouTube during these moments where people are working on the exercise. That's the old DJ coming out for me.
Yeah.
Take requests. We only have a couple more people voting, and then we'll close it up and see which ones had a bit more appeal than others in terms of we could help. Yeah. So there was an observation made that one aspect the quadrant can help us here is which target group contains the majority of the market. Like say in one region, market region, there might be 5% of the market is caregivers, 35% is restaurant owners, 40% is gig economy people, 20% hospitality. So that's true. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily give context the amount, but I would assume that my assumption is that that would be kind of done a little bit further down the road in terms of evaluating where it makes sense to kind of isolate our target market and what particular areas would make sense. So we'll end the voting session. And again, what we're doing is using this as a heat map to see what kind of comes out. At a top level, it looks like creative artists and musicians, job retraining teachers, consultants, and people from the hospitality sector came out on top, as well as business coaches, facilitators, and mentors. We're taking a look. I'm just seeing if the images got some, no, it would have put the images probably up in front, but it looks like the majority of our votes seem to be in that high pain, low buying power area. And then we have one that's in the quadrant of the high pain, high buying power, which is business coaches, facilitators, and mentors. And I think there was another 4 vote for learning designers and professionals. Okay, so
Also,
go ahead.
we have several cards and pictures that are actually more or less the same group of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So the images could basically be kind of like an add to that. If you wanted to combine the two together, it could basically influence the way that the vote kind of comes out. So yeah, that's a good observation. I assume that the image itself would kind of carry weight, but you're right, it could kind of combine in the same space. So real fast, we have a half an hour left. So we could take a quick break here just because we've been sitting for an hour working on this to go get a drink or go to the bathroom, and we can come back and try to finish up the last 1 or 2 exercises before we call it a session. So give me a thumbs up if you want to take a break, or give me a hand if you want to keep on going. I got 1 thumbs up, I got 2 thumbs up, okay. So we have some people who want to take a break. Let's break for 10 minutes. We'll come back at 10 minutes after the top of the hour. Go ahead and turn your video and your audio off if you'd like, if you want to kind of step away so I know that you're away. And then we'll come back and we'll wrap up with step 3 and step 4. And feel free to stay on if you want to have a conversation while I'm kind of doing this. You can even help me design if you want. But with this particular one, I think I'm going to change it so it's a bit more versatile than what I did here, because it looks like we're going to need to do a particular audience type and then kind of figure out the problems and pains, products and services. Americo, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
We did kind of a heat map vote on this, and we have certain ones that seem to kind of have the most votes. Do you think it would help if I went ahead and transferred some of those cards into the spaces so that it reflects the desire of the group to kind of concentrate on those particular folks? Even though I said it was a heat map vote, it seems like there is somewhat of a plural majority on some of those to bring them over. Or do you think that I should leave it open-ended and let the group kind of bring over their own images and digital cards to combine them or talk about them? I'm kind of more inclined to do the latter.
I'm sorry, I don't think I understood correctly your question. Can you, sorry.
I will listen to myself. I was like, I don't even understand it. Okay. The question is, should I preload this space here for
Yeah.
the instant and digital cards with the top votes? Or should I stick with my original plan and let the audience, let the people that are doing this exercise drag and drop their cards that they want to use in this space and write out the problems and pains and the products and services that these particular audience groups may want?
I think you should bring it in, bring the picture or the card into that zone, that image.
Okay. What about you, Alex? What do you think?
So the question, I should no, but I think it's so. I think the top. I think you should stick with the top voted cards and bring them over to that area. So if there was a vote, if there was a heat map vote, I would stick to the results of that and bring them over and have no discussion then around that.
Got it. Okay. Diana, what do you think? Yeah, I'm talking. Yeah, I think you have to unmute yourself. Still can't hear you. Here we go.
You hear me?
Now I hear you.
Oh, I was trying to answer the chat because I think it was Cody who said that she found it challenging to, because she voted on the different groups which might have a supportive character towards each other. And I kind of felt the same way. So what I wanted to write is that it might be possible to have one exercise between the two before the vote. I'm sorry, there's a very loud child.
That's okay.
They're just trying to make their opinion known too. It's just they're not in front of a microphone. It's okay.
The window's closed now.
Okay.
Maybe there could have been an exercise in between where we could put up matches, and then the matches stand as one unit that can be voted on as well.
I think that is a possibility. Let me kind of go through what I'm thinking about doing. So let's just take the votes, kind of what I was doing here, and I'll put the first one here. So let me lock down these particular ones, just so they don't move. So creative types and creative artists and musicians would be here as terms of like a starting point, because that was something that was here in the high pain, low buying power one. Also, from the hospitality sector is another card that was here. So we bring this over to this. Actually, let me do one thing before I lock this down completely. Lock this one. I'm going to make one more and bring this down over here so that I have another copy. So this one's from the hospitality sector. Those are the two I think that were top voted if I'm looking at the votes right. And then there was one for business coach, facilitators, and mentors for high pain, high buying power, which is up here. And we'll get the opportunity out of the way. Get out of here, opportunity. You're not involved with this one. I'm gonna go ahead and minimize this a little bit. Take the same construct that I've done down here. In a view into what it's like doing this like late at night, only there's more music going on. And I'm going to actually change this out. Nope, I want to do shift. Beer, beer, but dear. And is it this one? Close enough. Actually, we'll do that one. There you go. Where the high pain, high buying power was this one, business coaches and mentors. So we'll put that one in the center at this point. Okay. So I think, and then there's one where job retraining teachers and consultants is right in the middle. So I want to say that probably I'll put it into low pain but high buying power and just kind of entertain that particular one. So we're going to bring this a second. I got 3 minutes, so I'm almost done. I think I can make the timeline. Bring this down 1, so there's an open one. Okay, and can anyone take a guess as to what I'm doing here before I do it? You get a shiny gold star if you do. But if you don't, that's fine. Purple, bring this up a bit. And one more over here. I'll do one more down there. Okay. Let's do this thing. One more minute. I'm just doing aesthetics at this point.
Robert,
Yes.
how did you select the winning ones?
So I just did it by votes, by heat map vote in terms of interest. So that was my intent, was to just do a heat map to see what's interesting to most people. But what I did is I did a pivot and said, okay, well, if we're talking about potential audience types, so here's what I'm landing on for this, is that I'm taking the ones that were voted on and I'm giving them a space. So they basically have some real estate in this particular next exercise. So I'm going to bring this over like this, give this one a different color, and I'll use this as an example. So in the previous exercise, for low pay and low buying power, there was one that garnered a lot of interest, which is business coaches, facilitators, and mentors. I think I got that right. That was,
yeah.
It was low pay, high buying power. Okay, my fault. So it actually should be down here. So maybe I got that backwards. I'm rushing a bit. So business coaches, facilitators, and mentors is down in this space down here. And the job retraining consultants was in the same space. We can make it low pay and low buying power and kind of bring that both over there. Okay. All right, so let's take for this one, for example, is that we indicated that this audience was one of the things that we as a collective group were interested in. The focus for this particular exercise is that you kind of think about the specific problems and pains related to the idea of unemployment that they're currently going through from your perspective, or from what you understand. And at the same time, you're thinking of products and services that would basically help them. Now, they don't need to be brand new products and services. They can be existing ones. But the idea is that you're starting to think about the context of the particular audience that we've defined in the previous exercise. And then what I've done here is I've left it open to interpretation. So if someone wants to take a particular card or an image from this side and bring it over here, then they're welcome to do so. So there's space to do that. So there's the primary, and then there's a secondary one that they can do, where they can combine, take an image and a card together, and kind of use that space to do it. If there's one that's already existing that's in this space that has a predefined, there's the other option is that people can add to this if they want to add an image that corresponds to it, to help them think of the problems and pains of products and services that correspond to that particular group. Now, before we do any kind of like copying or moving, I'm going to take this and put this into the original canvas over here on Zoom. If you're watching through that, you'll see me kind of do that. It won't have the grid, but I'll be able to kind of reflect it up there. And I'll take a really quick snapshot before we start moving stuff up, so that I can at least have the context of what we were doing. Actually, do this, do that, and okay. Whoa. That was weird. The sharing window just stopped. Did it close?
Yeah.
Wow. All right, hang on. That was really weird. That's the first time that taking a snapshot in Mac OS like completely killed the window. All right, let's back up. Do-do, do-do, do-do. Okay. So before we go down this path of kind of doing this, what are your thoughts about kind of going this approach? Is there anything missing? Do you like it, not like it? Darwin, I'm going to start with you. What do you think of this?
I like that you open it up the possibility of bringing the second layer aside from the one identified. So it means we're actually taking sort of like audiences or persona within the different quadrants anyways, right? It just so happened that in one quadrant we have like 2 target audience there.
Yeah, for the one that's high pain, low buying power, these were the 2 audiences that seem to have the most interest. So they're put in those 2 spaces here. But the idea is that if there's one that I missed or that people want to feel really strongly about or want to combine 2 of them, then you have this open area for that to happen. And of course, if there's more interest in that, somebody speaks up and says, well, I'd like to do another combination, then we just move everything to the right-hand side.
And this is a direct response to what we heard a while ago from comments wherein we might find some similarities and there's an opportunity to like combine, right?
Correct. So then I'm leaving that open for people to do that if they want to.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'm still stuck in that mental model wherein you have the 4 quadrants and normally with Gravitate will practically play first in one quadrant based on the objective of this, which is like trying to probably create a product. So probably high pain, high buying power would be where we start. But then I see that we're attacking it in all 4 quadrants.
Yeah, I think what I'm attempting to do is to match the interest of this quadrant and of the group with the focus of this. So I'm giving some of these equal weights. So low pain, high buying power, and low pain, low buying power did have one representative of both, but there were 2 dominant ones in the second one for the second audience. So normally as a facilitator, I would say start with this, the creative arts positions in the hospitality sector first, because then that would make the decision for step 4, which is deciding on an audience, that much easier, because then you've put more focus and effort into this. However, again, if somebody says, you know what, there's real interest in this person for low pain, low buying power, and has some ideas around the products and services they could do, that's why I'm kind of representing like the second and the third tier, so to speak.
Sure. But in the event that there's no prominent personality in one quadrant, did you just decide as a facilitator to move over one? I
just decided to take the heat map vote that we had just done and take the top votes in that and give them, like, they're basically placed. And if you're a fan of playoffs, then this is kind of like the wild card spots where people who want to fight for a particular audience type or have a real good idea about what they want to do, they can basically adopt or put that audience in that space and then write out the problems and pains they think they do. Because there's one individual I'm thinking about that's very close to domestic violence. So if there was something here where there was a caregiver and he or she would have this this idea around how they could basically help with unemployment, then if who am I as a facilitator to say you can't really put that there because the tribe has spoken, so to speak. It gives them an opportunity to basically go in there and say, here's what I think should happen. And they can also influence thinking around how things could go based on just the argument itself or what they think.
Robert, I have something here based on the discussion that you and Darwin had. I'm starting to see something that's a little different now that you have this board. in that maybe you don't need to necessarily do a heat map at the beginning. And if you have a board with multiple options for each of the quadrants there, you can tell people to just go to town and they can start do potentially affinity mapping, seeing the ideas and moving some of those things into different spaces depending on the ideas of the problems, and affinity map from that perspective. So I see it as a little more powerful now that you have this layout from that perspective.
So are you saying that that in between step 2 and step 3, there's an affinity diagram exercise to kind of organize this audience based on, well, what were you thinking the affinity would be against? How would that stack?
So basically you have these low pain, low buying power, all the way to high pain, high buying power, but have multiple stacks of audience images or digital cards for each of them. And then just tell people, look, grab stuff from your quadrants and start moving them to the places where you see and start working on some of the problems you want. And as people move them, let's say I could identify a problem, maybe someone can say, oh, this one problem that this person put, I can see the pilot being applied aside from the actor. So now you can start to have the affinity map, the ideas and the problems all sort of merging, but sort of organically by just presenting people this free board with multiple options.
So are you suggesting that instead of kind of trying to first choose the audience and then think of the contextual of their problems and pains of products and services, that there's something here where basically you list out different problems and pains related to unemployment and products and services related to that as well, and then being able to transfer over those particular cards that are in this left side over to the right?
That could be one way, but it could be both ways. You could say transfer stuff from the left to the right and start thinking of the problems, or start thinking of the problems and transfer from left
Over
to right. Yeah, either way.
Okay, so you start thinking of problems first, and then you make the Eisenhower matrix kind of like the main thing where you just basically like you attach like the problem to the person, or like you kind of look at the list out and then you just go, okay, well, this is ideal for the pilot because this particular one seems to be what they would kind of interpret or experience.
I'm not advocating a specific path.
Oh, I know. I'm just kind of trying to ride with you on this to see how from a process standpoint it would actually work. That's all.
Got it. I mean, from a process standpoint, then I would probably just tell people, look, you have some stuff that you wrote on the Eisenhower matrix. Start thinking, where would you put these in these quadrants, and what are the problems for these people that you want to solve for?
Got it.
Right? And then, somebody might start moving things from the low pain, low buying power into the low pain, low buying power, identify a problem. Somebody might be able to write off that idea and say, oh, I see now this pilot who was in low pain, high buying power also applied to this low pain, low buying power, and match that. So there's somewhat of an organic thing that might potentially happen in that respect.
Got it. Okay, yeah, I'm following you. Cody, I haven't called on you all session long, so what are your thoughts so far? Especially with this exercise, the way we're kind of doing it.
There is a small part of me that's still waiting for yesterday. There's a small part of me that's like, but what about yesterday? And I'm still like, is this a test exercise? Where's yesterday? So that I can just recognize that there's a small part of me about that. I like the idea of like going from the quadrant into the four there's three audiences. Somehow that started to feel really constrained. Like I'm starting to notice that I feel more constrained. Not focused, just constrained. Whereas where I found that I started to go was these pairings. Like I started to see pairings of things like, oh, well, if the single mom at home and the retired job people, the people who have like training and the people that do this, they could help each other out. like I started to see those connections. So that was something that I haven't found room to how to express those, because that seemed to be what was wanting to kind of come through. But other than that, I like the idea of sort of that about sort of making this more open-ended so people could kind of run with it. I think that feels, because then it's like you're not having to focus or choose, but it's more like following what feels alive and going like, oh, I really feel in touch with, you know, the single parents right now, or I really feel in touch with this. Let me talk about them. And then maybe something where it might be like, the only thing I would add would be like the, I guess, problems and pains, but is also with the needs, because some place to talk about these connecting needs, like the job retraining teaching consultants, you know, they might have something to offer so and so. And I know Diana talked about this as well. So that's kind of my sense.
So one thing that I think may help is that I think what I'm trying to do is conflate things a bit by combining these two. If you were to take this out and you just said problems and pains related to this particular type of audience, it gets a bit more granular in terms of our interpretation over here. Whereas you're not trying to conflate the two, but you're really talking about and being empathetic around what they're currently experiencing. And then the idea is that if you wanted to add into this some extra aspects, then you're talking about something where you can add some other things to this audience, like the other images, other things you saw here, so that you can give context to job retraining teachers and consultants, so that maybe there's a combination of both, where it can kind of expand upon the problem and the pain. So really what you're talking about is an exercise that doesn't try to do this first, gets rid of the products and exercises or products and services, but goes down this path where you're starting to feel, okay, what's the context that they're dealing with, and kind of get a bit more of an understanding of what they're going through. Because in that way, it's less about trying to kind of say, okay, this is what they want, but more, let's stick in the context of what we did here with kind of organically seeing where this is going, and to JF's point, kind of figuring out a way to kind of combine the two and making sure that the both of them kind of have a stronger relationship. So just to give context, the rest of this is going to be discussion. I'm not going to kind of go through the exercise per se to have it do it unless people feel strongly about it. But Barad, you're definitely got your hand in your face, so you're definitely thinking about this. What are you thinking about with this?
Yeah, because like I mean, I'm sort of like trying to refresh my mind as to what we discussed in the previous session when we designed this initially, and so it's a couple of really impactful insight that we just uncovered right now, and I am really interested. It caught my attention really. So I was thinking about the context of an enterprise where they have budget, they can target any target group, they could develop products and services for any type of people, as long as it fits their industry. So I feel like only the target group is not enough. The feasibility of the product and service for them also play into the effectiveness or the effectiveness of the entire project. What do I mean by that? It's like, okay, we have identified a target group, we have identified a very viable pain point, but the solution or the candidate solution, products or services, may out of, for example, our technological capability. So I think it's a triangle of target group, their pain, and the product and service that determine the feasibility of the project, right? So that's, I think, only just focusing on a target group cannot guarantee the success of the entire project alone.
In your opinion, do you think that the conversation about products and services about these products should actually be reserved for day 3? So that we're on day 2 where we're talking strictly about audience. If our focus is strictly about audience, is the idea that we're thinking about how we can serve them, putting the cart before the horse, where really we should think and couch the product and service in the experiment phase, where we can start speculating on how we can help them once we have a thorough understanding of what audiences we're trying to serve.
Yeah, I think so too. I think because like when we talk about products and services, we are sort of shifting our mentality from like exploration, from exploration of the problem and the users to coming up with solutions. And I think right now, when we are in the exploration phase, it doesn't make sense to think about solutions. And the more we can surface and unearth problems and user needs, I think it would be more beneficial for the third date when we are actually thinking about solutions.
Graham, you made a comment about prototyping is not about feasibility. Do you want to expand upon that?
Yeah, so maybe my understanding of prototyping in general and trying to encapsulate through the dash is that we'll be designing experiments around a solution, and it's about whether they are interested in it, not about whether it's feasible as a business proposition. In the same way, I mean, I have another point that I think this matrix, I think we're getting, there's an anchoring bias to remembering the impact effort matrix and the Eisenhower matrix, those two terms written, that where we traditionally end up in top left quadrant. I think there's an interesting, all this is a sense-making framework in a 2x2 format. Not about necessarily choosing one particular quadrant. So you could also have an exercise where you could synthesize the axes. In other words, depending upon what's the bunch of stuff you've got, you could say, well, I want to look at it through a pain buying power axis like this, or I'd like to look at it through a novelty axis. Or so there's also room for using a 2x2 sense-making framework, but then making it fluid in terms of what the axes are, depending on what the exercise is pointing towards. That's just another point. But viability and feasibility is not an issue at this point, in my view.
I agree with that.
So I'm going to go back a little bit, and Graham, I'm going to stick with you, but JF said something about kind of using this framework as a way of organically being able to associate what they're going through, like the pains and the problems that they have. What did you think of JF's idea previously?
I certainly like the wildcard aspect, because sometimes in groups, even through the voting process, there's somebody who's still kind of attached to an idea, and it gives them the freedom to bring it forward. So I really like that concept. And then the messy approach of dragging from left to right and thinking and creating on the right and linking to the left is an interesting, I think you'd have to try and run it as an exercise to see how chaotic it gets. But sometimes I sense in these very chaotic processes, you end up with some absolute gems that you don't get through something that looks neater and tidier and carefully managed.
I think in a way, so to do a variation on a theme with affinity diagramming, I think you could do cluster diagramming, where you have those different pains that associate themselves with unemployment and all the different things that we can think about in that space. And then what you do is you transfer the different cards to that space so that you have an impression of who we first, in terms of, you could still do the heat map on even though there's a bias there, but then take that same framework and then put it in the context of the pains and problems. So it's not this neat way of doing it where I've aligned everything and made them color coordinated and it's all capital letters and it looks very well designed, but actually goes into kind of another messy situation where it's like, okay, I want you to start thinking of all the pains and problems related to unemployment in this context, right? We've already interpreted what they are, but now we're going to put that on the shelf for a minute and just start thinking of all the different things that are there, space them out a bit, and then start bring that audience into it so that you can start seeing what the different relationships are. And that would lead to further dialogue about who we're attempting to serve. And then it also goes into the idea before about clustering and combining different ones together that correspond to a particular pain or a particular problem that someone's experiencing. So it allows for that synthesis of different audience types, and especially if they have an affinity towards a particular need. Okay. So right now we are out of time. We're at the bottom of the hour. Just so this is a suggestion from day one. For those that have to leave and that have something they need to go to, they're more than welcome to exit. but someone made the suggestion of doing overtime for 10 minutes. So we would basically run until 40 after the hour. But if you need to leave, you can exit to do other things if you have another obligation to go to. But we can extend the conversation for 10 minutes to do a little bit of retro or to continue the conversation we're having now. So if you need to drop off, feel free to do so. There's no group shot this time around, so you can spare yourself and having to grab something from your desk if you don't want to. But if you want to hang out until 40 after, then that will be the absolute cutoff point. So we can continue conversation up until then. Okay.
Right.
So, but if you do leave right now, thank you very much for coming again today. Hopefully this was an interesting conversation we're having. And like I had done before with the video, I will send an email to everyone who signed up for this to say, based on the conversation, here's what the new kind of version looks like. And I'll walk through those changes that I made based on your suggestions and what people have been saying. And then you can follow up to say like, well, I really meant this, not necessarily this, but it's good enough. We do it that way and we'll kind of see where that goes. Okay. So it's open floor. So if anyone would want to bring up a topic or anything about what you experienced today, this is overtime, please do so. You can just come off mic. It doesn't need to necessarily wait. I can call on somebody if we need to get the conversation started, but I'll leave it open-ended to either to continue the conversation we're having about audience and pain, or you can rewind a bit and comment on something that happened previously.
I would like to bring one question, and I don't have a definite answer to that. So it's the dash, it's about creating a prototype. And the question that I have, and as a performance marketer, I would answer that in a certain way. Does that exercise and does that thinking around the audience in the way, hey, where's the audience and which pains they have and so on, without really connecting them. We're guessing a lot and we have our opinions about them. Does that really help to make it a better prototype?
So you're asking, if I'm understanding correctly, is to really explore the audience so that the prototype is better fashioned on the who, like who you're actually going after?
So one thing I have written down is, so we are discussing at the moment, like if you're in a corporate environment and you really know well your audience, your clients and your personas because you're constantly talking, then I would say this is perfectly fine. Most of the corporates I know, and I'm in the startup environment, they are definitely not. People don't know so much their audience. So it's important when they have an idea, they come, they want to make a prototype. So one thing is, and the prototype is a part of connecting with the audience, but now we are speculating a lot about the audience. And I am just asking, is this kind of speculating, my personal opinion on that, is that making the prototype that we are going to do any better then? So is this part helping to get to the next level, to refine it a little bit?
I see what you're saying. So the answer I have to that is that this process bucks the trend. It actually, it adopts Alberto Savoya's approach that if you really want to be black and white about things, you have to start with a blank slate and think that what you have or know about your audience is based on either other people's data or it's outdated to the point where your audience may have moved on. So you're making certain assumptions about your audience through these exercises, but what you're attempting to do is to clarify that understanding through prototyping, fast, cheap experiments that don't have a lot of R&D spend behind them. And you can actually like figure out if your interpretation of your audience is correct, or if you're discovering something new where they've evolved in a way that isn't reflected in your current research and data. So that's the idea behind it. It's not to do any, you can bring people that are very well versed in the audience types to the table when you do this process inside the business so that they'll have some representation and they'll be able to speak with some authority and lend some credence to some of the things you're doing in this exercise, for example. But I'm adopting the view from Alberto's side that you really don't need to have a lot of data and research with you when you come to the table, which is counterintuitive to researchers and designers, and really pressing forward with something that you think could work in the market and learning from your own perspective what works and what doesn't. Because it could, go ahead.
I agree with that view, but I would say making a whole session about that takes a lot of time and a lot of space for just me having some assumptions about the audience that are not that challenged. I could press that in a smaller view. I'm going to pre-to-type and experiment with that anyhow. So why now take a lot of time and talking about the audience and how it matches and if they have low pain or pain? I just have an assumption. I have to map it out. I have to know what it is. I agree, and then just go for the pre-to-type and don't do so much exercise on that if the goal is a pre-to-type experiment.
What you could do is nullify day 2 altogether. So if you really know your exercise in your scenario, or sorry, if you know your audience in your scenario, you don't need to do these exercises at all. If your internals basically already have it predefined, you just go to the opportunity and you go to the experiment, because the audience is your assumption or your understanding is that you already know your audience and who you're attempting to serve. And what you're doing right now is trying to think of new ways of basically being able to serve that audience in some capacity, so that your audience definitions are kind of carried over from existing information into the process. So the dash is even faster, in other words.
Yes.
I'm curious about one thing that stuck out for me after we started to talk about pain was like, oh, that would have been an interesting like doorway. As soon as we started with people, I immediately was going to like the solution, but reversing it and finding the pain first, like what's the comment, like what are the pains associated with people who are unemployed, and talking about those, and then thinking it kind of expanded the delivery market, because if I find a certain pain that I'm focused on, it might apply to 3 or 4 different groups rather than, it was just a different kind of entry point that I found it interesting when we started to talk about that. And I was like, oh, I think that it would be really valuable to have explored that part, perhaps even before putting an identity on it. That was what's really stuck out for me today.
Part of the idea around this exercise too, or at least this segment, is that if you find in your experiments that you're actually trying to serve the wrong audience, or that you're not quite getting the right kind of fit, product market fit for what you're attempting to serve for them or attempting to do, then you can fall back on the audience types to see what you initially kind of posited out as who you were going to serve. If, to Alex's point, you don't have that defined initially. If you already have it defined, then you just basically have to rethink whether or not your approach or your execution is right, or if the market timing is right. But yeah, this is kind of like an impression of everyone who has skin in the game, to basically think of the people that they want to get involved, or they want to sell to, or to help out. And in this case with unemployment, it was like, how many different audiences can we basically choose from? What are their classifications in terms of what they're able to actually afford, and how much pain they're in? And then from there, my initial approach was to kind of combine both problems and pains with the products, because there would be a correlation. But after hearing what everybody had said this time around, I'm just focusing on like the audience type, or the problems and the pains that they currently have, if we just think of this type of audience in that context. We may not know exactly everything, but at least we're getting an impression based on school teachers or people that are artists and something, what they may be able to go through. Maybe we know some artists. But essentially the idea is that we're getting our first ideas of where things could go. So that was the thought. And we're out of time already. So that's it for today. We're going to start again tomorrow at 10 o'clock Central Time, which I think is 5 o'clock over in Europe. I want to thank everyone for sticking around and having this discussion around these exercises. Again, what I will do is follow up through a video to everyone who signed up on the panelist side to attend, so that this is my way of saying, I heard what you said. Here's what it seems like we could basically go with through in terms of a process, and kind of bring that around to everyone there. For everyone that's been observing on YouTube as well as Zoom, thank you so very much for coming by. I'll bring out kind of an update on LinkedIn so that it kind of thanks everyone for attending. And yeah, I'm very happy that everyone came around and gave their point of view. And kind of helped out this process and made it a lot more clear and a lot more efficient. And hopefully it's going to be something that works for everybody. Okay. So enjoy the rest of your day, your evening. Alex, have a great vacation wherever you are. And, for everybody else, enjoy your day, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. Okay. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.